the access to capital then was more access to capital. Now there's less access to capital. What does that actually mean? You alluded to interest rates before. Interest rates were really low. Now they're quite high, and they're scaling back a little bit as we speak. But what happens with interest rates is, as interest rates become higher, people that have mortgages and cars and debt, say in America, that's what the biggest, like 80 to 90% of the market is American market. You have people's debt becomes more expensive to service, so they have less money, which means it's harder to invest your money into the business that you may have as well. And that can affect businesses. Also, the aggregators leaving, bringing multiples down. And because there's less money for people to be purchasing businesses, there's access to capital for acquisitions, plus people that are hurting that have businesses, if they've got a lot of debt, personal debt or property debt. It makes this interesting area where multiples do scale back, because people that can't afford their debt and their business aren't doing so well, they will end up selling their business for a lesser multiple, which means basically for somebody that has cash right now, you can find these amazing businesses for lower multiples than you have seen in the last 4 years, right?
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. And I think we see that. And we also, to pick on a point you kind of said as well, we see buyers being pickier, to be honest, as well. When you go back to kind of that, the peak ZERP era, where, like you say, there were multiple people bidding for businesses, and they had to kind of like get due diligence done. Otherwise, they would open the door for somebody else to buy it. We see, particularly on the larger businesses now, like typically taking a bit longer in that due diligence stage, and buyers being a bit more picky, and smaller things, because, it would have been the case before where multiples were higher, where like, well, something will come up in due diligence, but either the buyer or the seller, it would be very, very easily overcome. Whereas now you kind of go into due diligence and, maybe buyers are a bit closer to the top of what they're willing to pay, sellers are at the bottom. And so that like due diligence period becomes a bit more fraught as well, and kind of like, just typically goes a bit longer.